The Minotaur Project, Part 1, Darcy, Episode 1, Taking Out the Trash. Viewer discretion is advised. Darcy was still in her 20s, but from a young age had grown up quickly. She was kicked out of her home a few months after turning 18, after her mother caught her in bed with her stepfather. It had been the fault of both of them, granted, but her mother chose to stay with her husband and blamed her alone. It wasn't fair, but she suspected her mother was too afraid to be alone at her age, and proceeded to make her the scapegoat and keep her man. While she didn't like it, and she felt betrayed, a part of her understood her mother and forgave her. She worked as a waitress in Maine for several weeks, until one of the regulars, her beloved Tom, got the courage to ask her out. He was tall, with a strong body, and knew his way around men, but with her, he was noticeably shy. He knew how to win a fist fight, but would choke trying to find the right words with her. This clumsiness went away as their relationship grew, and he would tell her later on that her beauty made it hard for him to focus. She wasn't sure if this was true, but she liked to hear it. She eventually picked him and married him because he was good looking enough, a hard worker, and she sensed he was loyal, which was something she needed after experiencing so many betrayals. Her marriage was a happy one while it lasted. Tom was a blue-collar, hard-working man, but after the first child came, it became hard to pay the bills. He thought joining the military would help him get a higher-paying career and take care of expenses for school, but unfortunately, he never came back home alive. Darcy was devastated, and for months would drink herself to sleep as she wept, missing her best friend and soulmate. She grew stronger, a feminine strength born out of necessity. It wasn't the chest-pumping strength of men attempting to prove they are the best among those around him, but a quiet strength which was needed for the sake of her children. She decided to stay in the house Tom had inherited from a relative. It was a wooded area, isolated but not too far from town. Her property did face directly into the dense black forest of Maine, which one could venture in and never come out if they weren't careful. She worried that one of her boys wouldn't make it back, but at the same time, this was the house of their father, and a part of him would be with them if they were to be raised in the property he chose for them. She was still close to her husband's family, and Uncle Leonard, Tom's older brother, would often show up with his wife and children for dinner, many times bringing the groceries and cooking the food himself, or the game meat from one of his hunting trips. This was one of those nights. Leonard was a harsh man with a crude sense of humor, but the warmness of his heart was made evident. He was one of the few people that could make her laugh again with his wild stories, and she appreciated the father figure for her boys and the older cousins that came with them. After a great night of good eating and board games, she began doing a bit of cleaning. It became late and Leonard and his family were still home, which wasn't abnormal in the weekends. His kids stayed over many times, and Leonard and his wife would spend the night in the empty rooms every once in a while and take the boys on a hike in the morning. She began to put the leftovers in the trash and soon picked up the bag and began carrying it out, or reminding herself to offer them to stay the night if they wanted to. It was a starless night since dark clouds hung over them, and she was using her phone as a flashlight while she made her way into the entrance of her property where the trash cans were located beside the road. As she approached, she heard some noises in the trash can. As if a startled animal had a knee-jerk reaction, she gave a sigh and told herself she needed to get a dog to frighten the raccoons. She began shouting at the animal, hoping to scare it as she approached the dumpster when she began to shine the light over it. She wasn't sure what she had seen at first, but instinctively shouted as loud as she could and ran back at her home and shut the door behind her. Leonard and his wife asked her to please explain what had happened. But Leonard, after seeing that she was not injured, didn't wait to hear her explanation and ran to his truck, picked up his hunting rifle and flashlight, and went out to investigate. As the adrenaline cooled down, she was able to start to make sense of what had happened. She had seen two men standing in the road beside the trash cans were very disfigured. They had very low foreheads and wide ears. It was somewhat like the cartoon Hey Arnold, but not as excessive to be a football shape. But what scared her the most was their grin and odd look in their eyes. Their eyes revealed what seemed a complete lack of intellect. They were innocent in the sense they couldn't distinguish between right and wrong, while at the same time being dangerous and nefarious. There had been local cases where people who were severely mentally handicapped had murdered their families in a fit of rage. She had met some of these families at the diner she worked in, and her mind immediately came to these men. Their eyes also seemed to reveal lust, which sent a shiver down her spine. While thinking about this, 2 gunshots are heard from Leonard as he curses at the night. Soon after, he walks in and says he definitely saw someone running but didn't take a good look. Knowing he didn't shoot them brought fear to Darcy, and instinctively she asked Leonard to please stay the night, which he agreed to do. Darcy hears Leonard's wife talking in the phone to the police, asking them to please come investigate. She gives a sigh of relief and tries to lay down and closes her eyes on the couch.